Welcome to Bigfoot and Paranormal Encounters podcast. And now your host, Dave Weichert.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Bigfoot Paranormal Encounters podcast. I'm super excited tonight. I have a good guest that's going to be on the show tonight. I just want to get something out of the way. The podcast will be moving to Saturday evenings from 7 to 9 p.m. starting next week. So bear with me here. Okay. All right. Let's not waste any more time. Let's go bring our guest in. And our guest tonight is Lon Strickler. Hi, Lon. How are you?
I'm doing fine.
All right. Let me just bear with me for a second so I can put you right beside me in a bigger block. Let's see here. Not sure why There we go. That's a lot better. So please bear with me tonight, Lon. I'm dealing with a sinus issue, and I'm having a little bit of trouble seeing. I was going to read your bio, but I went ahead and I put it in the ticker down below, and I'm going to run that for a while. So how are you, sir?
I'm doing fine.
Good. All right. I'm going to start off by asking you the most famous question on a podcast. What inspired you to do what you're doing today?
Well, there's a lot of tangents to that question. I kind of fell into this thing. I've always, I guess, been part of the paranormal. I had the first counter that I remember was when I was 9 years old back in 1967. I used to live, and I still do live, very near the Gettysburg battlefield. And growing up, I used to go out there a lot. I was kind of a history nerd, I guess you want to call it. I was really into all things Civil War and Gettysburg. So I used to ride my bike out there. So this one summer afternoon, I was out in the area where it's known as the Valley of Death, and that's just below Little Round Top, in between that, Devil's Den, and the wheat field. And as I was on my bike, it's like all of a sudden a huge TV screen opened up in front of me. And I was in the battle, literally. I saw soldiers, heard gunfire, smelled gunpowder, the whole 9 yards. I was seeing carnage. And it was shocking. But I guess I took it with stride because I stayed there. And it lasted about 30 seconds, maybe. And then it just faded off. And after that, I knew something was somewhat different with me. I am an intuitive. I've used my intuition and my gifts on cases as well as cryptid cases, but back then mostly hauntings and attachments and such. And I used to do investigations when I was in high school, actually, and that's how long I've been doing this. And I moved down to Maryland, lived in Baltimore for about 40 years, and then moved back up here back in 2016, and back where I grew up at.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, myself, I currently live in Bucks County, PA, but 55 years of my life was in Baltimore, Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
And, from 2001 No, I'm sorry, 2003 all the way up until 2016, I ran the Maryland Paranormal Research Team. So myself, I traveled a lot up and down the East Coast, and worked with a number of people. One of the persons I miss dearly is Rosemary Allen Golly. Uh,
Yeah, I was pretty close with Rosemary. Her and I actually worked on a few cases together. She was involved with the original Chicago Mothman cases that we started investigating back in 2011, but the task force started in 2017.
so in 2016, I pretty much came to a halt, and I hung my boots up for a while because of some medical issues with my wife and myself. And of course, I've always had that bucket list of researching Bigfoot. But over the years, I did a little bit, but more, ghost hunting. So let's take you back to 1981. Was that the Sykesville Monster?
Yeah, that's in May 9th of 1981, I had a Bigfoot encounter.
Okay,
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and show something real quick, and hopefully we'll get some listeners in here. If not, they'll be able to see it when they watch it. Let's see.
In the summer of 1972, Hurricane Agnes blew through Maryland, unleashing a torrent of flooding that tore the Sykesville Bridge from its moorings. Did the storm let loose something monstrous as well?
Sightings in the Sykesville area never started till about September of '72.
Over the years, the encounters continued. And in May 1981, mill worker Lon Strickler was fishing near Sykesville when he saw some sort of hairy hominid moving in the brush. Within minutes, the woods were swarming with police.
State policeman told me to get back in my car and leave. And I explained to him, well, I made the call. He said, you gotta leave.
Have you seen it? It's massive. It was huge.
You cannot be here.
When I was told to leave, I was frustrated. Something was going on. Something I didn't know about.
With the first Sykesville monster encounter, just one police officer responded. Almost 10 years later, Strickler's encounter triggered a manhunt. The authorities were on red alert. And it wasn't just local police. By all appearances, the response had turned to the feds.
I came back about an hour later, and the whole area was cordoned off. There were people going through the woods, dogs going through the woods.
There were helicopters, there were sheriff's cars, state police, black SUVs. The place was swarmed with federal agents. That doesn't make any sense to me.
So I was told that there had been some evidence found, but I was told I had to leave. So that's what I did. I left and went home.
The town was in sort of a chaos. There was a curfew put on. You couldn't go out at night. People were scared here.
Exactly which authorities were in Sykesville, or what they may have recovered, has never been documented.
The fact that the officials got there as quickly as they did tells me that they were tracking it and they were ready for it. But I do believe the government realizes that these creatures are real. They just do not want the public to say much or know much about it.
The government's reluctance to comment has stoked the community's suspicion.
It's very creepy to me and very disconcerting that there are no records of the Sykesville monster in our own police department.
that day you were fishing. What do you think you saw? Do you think it was a Bigfoot or something more different?
Well, at the time, I wasn't really sure what I saw, but I eventually realized that it was probably a Bigfoot. I mean, this was 1981. This wasn't too much further down the road from the Boggy Creek movie and all this stuff. I mean, people knew about Bigfoot, all in all. When I was fishing, and it's an area I had been many, many times. I used to do a lot of fly fishing all over the state, and I saw this dog across. This is about a mile downstream from Sykesville on the South Branch of Patapsco River, and I took I was standing in the river actually, and I was watching this dog across the way. And he was just kind of going in and out of the weeds. And I just didn't pay him any mind. And I continued to fish. But then I heard it yelp. And when it yelped, something stood up in the bush. And the bushes were pretty high back then. This was May. So I guess the weeds were probably about 4 or 5 foot high. They were pretty big. And this thing stood up. And I could see it from chest level up. So I knew it was big, and it was dark brown in color. And as I watched, this thing was moving to my left. It was on the opposite bank, and walked out of the weeds and stood onto the stone beach there, and just stopped, and we locked eyes with each other. He was about 40 feet from me, because it's not wide there at all. It's very narrow. And I'm just standing there. I mean, I'm wondering what this thing is. And I think we probably looked at each other for like 10 seconds or so. And it was interesting because it was making a clicking sound. I think it was gnashing its teeth. Okay. Whatever. I mean, but it was audible. I did get kind of a whiff of an odor that actually reminded me of fox urine, because it reminded me of what I used to use on my boots when I used to go deer hunting. And, after that 10 seconds, and it was definitely a male. I mean, I saw the genitalia on this thing. It was dark brown, some matted areas on it here and there, but it was mostly covered in dark brown hair. And it was conical. Had a very thick brow ridge on it, but quite honestly, it looked more human than it did ape. So I wasn't really sure what I was looking at, though I assumed it was probably a Bigfoot. And it turned around and just swiftly walked up into the woods behind it. And when that occurred, I got out of the river, walked up to my car, got in, and drove into town and called the police to let them know what I saw. Now, this area, there used to be, and I don't think it's there anymore, but there used to be a state hospital very near there, Springfield. And I didn't know if it was something that escaped or somebody that escaped from Springfield or what the hell was going on. But anyway, I called the police. I stopped at a bar that was actually right there on the riverbank. And I called the police, told them what I saw. The girl that answered the phone told me, "We'll go back there and wait for the police." Well, I'm thinking, why do I want to go back there? This thing might still be over there. So anyway, I did go back. And it's only like a 3-minute drive. It's probably not even a mile from Route 32. So I went back. And by the time I got there was a Maryland State police officer standing there, and he had one of those wooden barriers across the road already. And that's when he told me, he said, "You got to leave." And I told him, I said, "Well, look, I made the call on this thing. They told me to come back." He said, "I don't care." I said, "You got to go." So that's what I did. So I went back home, got changed, I guess I stayed about an hour. I figured, well, I'm going back, see what's going on. So I did. I drove back because I lived in Sykesville at the time. So I drove back there, and I got maybe halfway there, and there were cars and trucks all up and down the road parked, and I had to park and walk up to the barrier where they had been. When I got there, there was a Howard County police officer there at that time, and I walked up to him. There were a few other people standing there, but they had people with dogs going all through the woods. It must have been a dozen of them. They had a big white tent set up across the river where this thing was. And I think police from every local jurisdiction around there were there. As well, the feds. They had two black Wagoneers sitting there. And I heard a helicopter. Didn't see it at the time, but I heard a helicopter. So, yeah, they were there, and they were looking for something. So I went up to the Howard County police officer, and I kind of half-jokingly asked him, what's going on? He laughed and said, well, somebody said they saw a Bigfoot. Well, I didn't tell him I'm the one that made the report. So I said, oh, okay. Well, I didn't stay much longer. I figured, well, nothing's really here for me. Nobody's going to talk to me or anything. So I went ahead and went back home. And when I got home, I eventually called all three of the network stations in Baltimore back then. And I told the news desk and the editors what I saw. And each one of them told me, well, give us a couple days. We'll call you back and we'll. I said, okay. Well, 5 days later, nobody had called me. So I called MAR and I talked to the editor, the news desk there. And he said, I don't want to talk to you, and hung up on me. So, so over the years, and, I still get a lot of reports up and down the Patapsco River. In fact, we had a report down, I don't know if you know where Daniels is, but it's an old mill town. It used to be down the river from Sykesville. There was an encounter there about 3 years ago, a woman and her son. But there have been several Class A sightings in that area. And of course, the Sykesville monster incidents that happened back in 1972. And I didn't know anything about those things. I worked with a gentleman who lived in Sykesville, and all his family lived in that area. And in fact, that community in Sykesville down near the river is an African-American community. So all the witnesses back then in 72 and 73 were all African-American. And that's why the Afro-American newspaper in Baltimore got the original story, because they went in there to talk to the witnesses. So I had access to all the witnesses. Now, this is 8 years later. I had access to all the witnesses, found a few other encounters that had not been reported. And as years have gone by, I talked to one of the police officers from Sykesville who was there. He corroborated everything that I had stated. And, it's still fresh in my mind. And but I think, for people who are familiar with the area, and you used to live in Baltimore, being close to Washington and all up and down Patapsco River and other areas, there are a lot of government facilities. There's a lot of facilities that they don't even know what they are. And it has been like that for many, many years. I believe this being escaped from somewhere because they were looking for it. There was a report about 3 hours before mine in Marriottsville from a woman who had seen this same thing. And they were out looking. That's how they got there so quick.
Now, I find it odd that they not asked, well, they asked you, but they also made you leave. Do you think it's possible that they captured you?
They may have. I mean, I don't know if they did or not. They were really serious. I mean, they were really serious. I mean, with all the equipment and people they had there, they were definitely looking for something. Now, if they found it, well, I don't know. I don't know anything about that.
Right.
You know, I have made inquiries over the years, and you know what? That's been 42 years ago now.
Right.
I've heard a lot of different stories over the years. I've heard of other sightings nearby. I heard about a skeleton being found down on Pawnee Run, down near Marriottsville, about a few years after I had my encounter. There's a few other things too, but you know, I you know, people that don't know Maryland and Pennsylvania, you know, Maryland has a long history of cryptid sightings. And in fact, I had talked to somebody recently about a cryptid canine sighting not far from Sykesville not too long ago. So there's a lot of different things being seen. And yeah, so, you know, I'm still interested in what was going on. And, you know, when something comes in, I look into it.
Okay. I'm going to pull up this picture. I think it was a sketch that you had done, or?
Yeah, I commissioned that.
Okay. Let me make sure. Is that it?
Yep.
Okay. So, yeah, to me, I mean, well, I mean, I don't know.
Well, let's look at it this way. If I'd have had a gun and I was hunting, I'd have never shot it because it looked more human to me than it did ape or anything else. It wasn't threatening me. I didn't really have any inkling of any type of threat. I think it was just more curious as to why I was there. I think that had a lot to do with the gnashing and the teeth clicking. Yeah, I mean, but that sketch, I had actually a retired police forensic sketch artist from Florida, retired police officer, did that sketch for me.
Yeah, that's now. Had anyone else ever sent in a sketch of their sightings in the Sykesville area?
Nothing other than what was, nothing other than what was seen in the press in 1972. I mean, there were some kind of cursory sketches made, but a detailed sketch or anything else, I haven't seen anything.
Okay, I have a question here from one of the listeners. What did I do with it? Where did it go? Come on.
Was it the one about Soldier's Delight?
Yeah.
That Soldier's Delight is a serpentine type rock formation that's up by Nicodemus Road and Deer Park Road up by Liberty Reservoir. I've investigated that area several times. There's a lot of weird things that happen there. Now, my colleague Timothy Renner has also had some investigations in that area, but it's a very rare location, and in fact, near that rock formation goes from the roads the whole way down into the reservoir. And one of the Bigfoot sightings that has been reported was seen in that location. So, there have been a lot of things there.
Okay. Do you get a lot of reports from the PA area for Bigfoot sightings?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I occasionally get a report. Most of the sightings of Bigfoot are in Western Pennsylvania. Stan Gordon gets something, he'll contact me, or Eric Altman or other people. But I have several of my team members live in Pennsylvania, so we're communicating all the time. Sean Forker, Timothy Renner, a few other guys that I work with.
Right. Now, just last year, a half a mile from my cabin, there was a Bigfoot sighting. There was a father and a son that was coming from the firehouse. They were volunteer firemen, and they were coming from a meeting, and they were coming down my road a half a mile from my cabin, and they said that something very large, about 8-9 feet tall, brownish red hair, crossed the road. Didn't look at them, but when it crossed the road, it was from one side to the other side and gone in no time.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to interview the guy, but he was so afraid of being ridiculed and made fun of. And I told him, I said, I can keep your name anonymous, and we can still do this. But
Now you live up in Bucks County. We've had a spat of cryptid canine sightings in Bucks County over the past couple of years. Eric Mentel has been working with me. I've had other people, but of course my former colleague Butch Witkowski, who recently passed away, he used to do a lot of the Eastern Pennsylvania site reports and such. He lived near Reading, and we've had a few up there in Berks County as well. But no, Bucks County's had a lot of cryptid sightings.
yeah, I live in a small residential area, but there's more farm and wooded areas. They go on forever.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I haven't heard of any recent Bigfoot sightings, but I'm hearing about all kind of reports of UFOs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a lot of UFO sightings throughout Pennsylvania.
And Eric Mentel has been investigating them. The reports have been in the town papers and
Mm-hmm.
so forth. And it's been quite a bit. It's like for a while it was increasing. I mean, it was getting to be more and more and more. And yeah, so are you getting reports about UFOs in the Bucks County area, or?
We've gotten reports all over the state. I mean, but Eastern Pennsylvania has been very prevalent with UFO sightings for the past 15 years or so. Even when we had all the sightings down in Montgomery County, it's well known for a lot of sightings. Now, we got most of the larger sightings are the triangular shaped craft, and we've had a lot of those up and down the Susquehanna Valley, even east into over to Philadelphia and north up into Bucks County. So, yeah, we always get UFO reports. I mean, that's the most prevalent type of activity that gets reported to us.
Yeah, a while back I had reported to you about a sighting I had.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to talk about that tonight, but there's been more since then. I talked to two people in this area that had a sighting. One was on a farm, and one was just crossing from one side of the road to the other. And I'll tell you what, I hope I never have that sighting again. Yeah. So, nowadays, these UFO sightings have increased and becoming more and more and more, and the government is still trying to sit on it and don't want us to do much. What do you think? What do you think's going on? Why do you think it's gotten to the point where it's gotten today?
When you're talking about disclosure or supposed disclosure?
Well, mostly the sightings. I'm sorry.
Well, it's just like anything else. I think with the advent of a lot of this phenomena being covered on television, I think people are much more open about and less reluctant to come forward with sightings. I mean, UFOs, cryptids, anything. I know that we get more sightings, more detailed sightings than we did 20 years ago or so. I mean, it's much easier to get sighting reports now. But I think that has a lot to do with it.
Okay. I was looking for a note here. Here's a question.
Somebody had posted on here about Ilchester. I used to work down at Ilchester. I used to work down at the old Simpkins plant down there. I worked down there for 20 years. And the old Ilchester town, it is haunted. It is haunted. And we've, that whole area down there, the Patapsco Valley is a fascinating place. I've done investigations at the old Kennedy plantation that was down there on River Road years ago, back in 1980. What was it, 84, 83? I did an investigation there, but there's a lot of history, a lot of paranormal history from there to, over to Ellicott City, up north up into the headwaters. I mean, Patapsco River is that whole area is fascinating.
Right. I think that's, yeah, it is. It's Big Jim Jones. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah, I know Jim is.
Yeah, good friend of mine. He's a great guy. This next question I have for you, out in the forest, and this relates to people camping, out there doing research, hunting, and stuff like that. Now, people are coming up missing. Do you think Bigfoot has anything to do with that? Or the reason I ask that is because I've also read a lot where Bigfoot will help people.
Yeah. I think maybe to a small degree there might be some Bigfoot involvement there. But, for all the years I used to be out in the woods and a lot of different things, I think there's some other explanations that are much more viable as opposed to Bigfoot. Possibly unseen portals people are entering into. If people believe in alien abductions or extraterrestrial involvement or otherworldly involvement, there may be something to that. The fact that people just suddenly disappear so quickly and there's no remains, no blood, nothing, tissue or anything, I don't think it has much to do with wild animals for the most part. I think there are just a lot of things that we have no understanding of. We have a lot of theories. I believe intently in the interdimensional theory applied to a lot of paranormal phenomena and cryptids. And I think the missing 411 involvement and such in parks and, anywhere where anybody be camping or hiking or in the outdoors, I think there may be something to that. But until we get more information and more evidence, I don't really think we can honestly say that is exactly what's going on.
What do you think a Bigfoot is? What's your opinion?
Well, that's a double answer for me. I think there are indigenous beings, in particular in the Pacific Northwest, Florida, around the Gulf. I think there are populations of breeding individuals. I think they are different species or different races of these beings. But I think for the most part, Bigfoot, and especially in areas like here in the East Coast and the upper Midwest and other parts, other than those areas I named, I think for the most part, these are interdimensional beings. And I think that for a lot of cryptids, I think the upright canines, the dog man, the cryptid canines, the winged humanoids, Mothman. I think they can all be said to actually be some type of interdimensional being. And I mean, there's a lot of reason for that. I mean, I say that because, look, there's not a whole lot of physical evidence of these things. The sightings are fleeting sightings. They're very quick sightings. But of course, you know, like I said, there could be populations in some areas. But I think they are interdimensional beings, personally.
Okay. Right. Now, I just recently gotten a book from a good friend of mine. His name's Mike Shango. I'm not even sure when the book was published. I haven't really got into it yet, but you might be more familiar with it than I am. It's called the Maryland Bigfoot Digest.
Right.
Okay. Is there anything in there that you know about the Sykesville monster?
There's a mention of it in there.
A mention of it in there. Okay. This book, man, I'll tell you.
That book has been around a long time.
Yeah, but it took forever for me to get a copy of it.
Oh, did it? Yeah, it's hard to get.
I looked on eBay. I looked everywhere. I couldn't find it. And my good friend Mike just happened to have 2 copies, and he said, "Dave, I'll give you the other." So thank you, Mike Shaw. All right. So yourself, you have written. Whoops! I just pulled my cord here. I'm sorry. Yourself, you have written 9 books.
Yeah.
Okay. And 4 books, I believe you told me, are still in print.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're still available, yeah.
Okay. Is it possible for myself to get all 9, or?
Unless you know somebody who's got them, because I don't even have copies of the early ones.
Yeah, I was hoping you did.
Yeah, I don't even have copies of those.
Really? Okay.
Now, my publisher has been thinking about taking all 5 of those books. I call it the Encounter series because they are all early encounters that have been reported to me over the years, and they have been talking about actually putting it into one volume, editing it, putting it into one volume. Wow. So, I mean, unless that happens, I don't think there's going to be much of it.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to flip through them real quick and put them up there for the listeners to check them. Well, let's see. There's Alien Disclosure.
Yeah, that's coming out in audiobook in a week or so. Yeah.
Okay. I'll make a note of that.
That's one of the Encounter books I did earlier.
Okay, and there's Bizarre Encounters, Cryptid Encounters.
That was my first book.
Right, that was your first book. Okay. Mothman Dynasty.
Yeah, that has to do with the Chicago winged humanoid phenomena that we are still investigating it for the past dozen years or so.
Okay. Let's see what we got here. All right. Mysteries, Encounters. Strange Encounters. Let's see. Is that Mimi or Mimi?
Meme humanoids.
Humanoids. Okay.
That's my most recent book.
Most recent book. Okay. Winged Cryptids.
Yeah, that's the old cover, but that also has the follow up to the Chicago phenomena and other winged cryptid sightings and encounters that have been reported to me over the years.
Okay. Something I always enjoy listening about Stan Gordon. He talks about it a lot when you and Stan Gordon are on the Bill Bean show. Bill Bean's a good friend of mine. I actually did his first appearance. Stan Gordon would talk about the is it called the Thunderbirds?
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, the Thunderbird is a moniker that people use nowadays for oversized cryptid birds. It's part of the indigenous people's lore. I mean, a lot of tribes have had stories and lore about many cryptid creatures, and including the thunderbirds are these large birds, as well as Bigfoot. But the thunderbirds. Now we have had sightings in Pennsylvania, but I've had sightings of thunderbirds all over the country. Large, cryptid birds that science cannot identify or explain, but people see them, and we get reports of different types of even pterosaurs, even pterodactyl-like birds, winged cryptids. I mean, it's a phenomena that continues to this day.
Wow. I'm sorry, just bear with me here for a second. I was, okay. I done lost the note that I had. Question went on. Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize. I can't find the note. Brain farting here today. Okay, all right. Let's talk about Dogman. How many? I mean, well, not how many, but do you get a lot of reports about Dogman?
About what?
Dogman?
Oh, Dogman? Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I call them cryptid canines, but
Right.
there are all varieties. I mean, here in Pennsylvania in particular, and even down in Maryland, they come in quadrupeds, bipeds. Many of them look like very large, muscular, tapered creatures, as well as quadrupeds that looked almost like they're some type of hyena. We get a variety of sightings, and in fact, I have a map on Google that I have an interactive map I use for Pennsylvania dogman and upright canine sightings that I plot on there, and with links to the actual case reports.
Yeah. Gosh, I hate myself for losing that. Maybe this is it. I'm not sure. No, that's not it. I lost it. It probably don't go underneath on here somewhere. Okay. I'm gonna give you the. Is there anything that you want to discuss that you want to talk about?
I talk about anything.
I know.
I'm kind of the eclectic investigator as far as paranormal and the unexplained. I mean, I've got a lot of irons in the fire, and if anything comes of interest and I think it's worth investigating, I'll usually do that. But I've been involved with a lot of different types of cases over the year. Of course, with the winged humanoids, I find fascinating because I had an encounter in 1988 here in Pennsylvania that very much looked like and acted like the same cryptid or being that people in Chicago have been seeing. So, I find it interesting that myself and my team have kind of taken the forefront with this investigation. I mean, especially since I had an encounter, and there have been sightings in this area where I live at of these type of beings. So, there are winged humanoids and Mothman in Pennsylvania as well.
Um, okay. All right. Now, myself, I've never seen a Bigfoot, but
Hmm.
I've had a Bigfoot encounter, many, because I worked on a farm for a whole summer, and the guy I was working for had problems with Bigfoot coming on his property and stuff like that. But the whole time I was there, till the time I left, and I actually left because I got tired of him arguing with his wife. Uh, he was the type of guy that would always grab his shotgun and want to do it his way. But he wasn't a Bigfoot researcher or anything like that. But I have seen strange things that I can most definitely say was a Bigfoot, but I didn't see it. Eye contact. I smelled it. I've heard it scream, all that stuff. Um, but the Holy Grail, seeing it eye to eye, I've never had that. Now you've worked out in the field, boots on the ground with Eric Altman.
Yeah, Eric and I did a radio show together for years, and we keep in contact and talk about sightings throughout the state. And yeah, I'm friends with Eric and Sean as well. Sean Forker from up in Williamsport. We're all we kind of, and of course with when Butch was around and with Stan, we all know each other. So yeah, if anything comes up, anything of interest, we're usually on the horn.
Okay. Do you have any new documentaries coming out or?
We just filmed one. I was in Chicago about a month and a half ago, and I can't talk a whole lot about it, but it will be out. But we did a documentary for the Chicago winged humanoids.
Uh, so let's. I'm sorry, I'm mixing it up, but
It's all right.
I had a sheet of paper with questions on it. And, I mean, I have diabetes, and I have to write things down. I can't keep them up here because the old hard drive stopped working a long time ago. So, hmm, yeah. Let's. Gosh, I'm sorry. I apologize for getting stuck here, but let me take a look at anything. No, it's not. So, now, gosh, I wish I could find it, but I can't. All right, so, stuck under there. No. Lana, I'm sorry, buddy. Um, I'm just stuck for words because I'm trying to figure out a question for you. Oh God. Well, I can't believe I lost it. Let me take a look on some notes here. See what I got. Uh, Let me ask you this. Uh, Penhurst to Solemn. Have you ever done any investigations there?
Many, many years ago. I don't even know when it was. I'd say back in the late 80s, maybe. I don't do a whole lot of haunting investigations at old facilities and such. If I do an investigation, it's normally a private investigation that I'll get involved with. I've done a lot of those over the years, but as far as old asylums and old buildings and such, I don't do a whole lot of those.
Yeah, I've pretty much hung my boots up for that too. Uh, I've done a few since 2016, but not many. And that was one of the places that I never got the chance to visit, and I was just curious of, you know, I had some questions for that, but okay. So, uh,
I can tell you, while you're looking for something to ask me, I can tell you about my winged humanoid encounter I had back in '88. Um, this was in October 1988. I was living down in Baltimore, and I ran across a guy I went to school with. We were in Boy Scouts together, actually, and when I lived up here in Pennsylvania, and I was born and raised in Hanover, Pennsylvania, which is just east of Gettysburg. Anyway, I saw him there. He had his troop there. It was some type of jamboree or something. I was actually there. It was at Timonium Fairgrounds, so I was actually there for an antique show or something. I don't even know what was. But anyway, I saw him. We got together. We hadn't talked for about a dozen years or so. So we sat there and had lunch together. And he knew I was into the paranormal even back then, because when we were kids, we spent a lot of time on the battlefield. I mean, back then you could spend the night on the battlefield. You can't do it anymore. But,
no.
he had seen a lot of things with me over the years there. So as we were sitting there talking, he asked me, he said, I know you're still into this, into the paranormal. He said, a friend of mine who's another scout leader, we're going to be going up to the old Camp Conewaga, which is just north of me, above New Oxford, Pennsylvania. He said, we're going to go up there because during the summer, a lot of the troops had been scared out of the woods because they heard screaming. They didn't know what it was. Okay. I said, well, he said, would you like to come up next weekend and just take a look around? So I said, yeah, I'm game. So I met him up at the campground that next Friday. We, we unpacked, got out into the woods, hiked in there, set up camp. And by the time we got, all set up, it was just starting to turn dark. I guess it was about 6:30 or so. So we spent the night around the campfire, very quiet. We each had tents. It was 3 tents. So the next morning we woke up and we were sitting around eating, and the other guy had mentioned, did you hear anything walking around in the campsite? And I did. I thought maybe it's one of those guys getting up to relieve themselves in the woods or something. I didn't know. But, I didn't think much of it. But there was nothing in the campsite that was disturbed. So that day we spent most of the day in the woods. We were hiking all around. There's some old state game lands around there as well. We just wanted to get a lay for the, of the area, maybe have some indication what was causing these screams or whatever. So we were out there a long time. We were out there all day. So we came back to the campsite. I guess about 6. It was just getting to be dusk. And we were sitting around the campfire eating and just talking football and whatever else came to our mind. So about 10:30 or 11 o'clock or so, I don't know really what time it was, we were getting ready to turn in. We were tired. We had been out there walking all day. So as we're sitting there getting ready to go, we heard the screaming sound coming from the woods. Now, it could have been an animal. I didn't really pay it much mind. There's a lot of wildlife up there. It could have been anything. Maybe a bobcat or. But anyway, I didn't think much of it. So we just got ready and we were sitting around the campfire a little bit longer talking about what it was we heard. And then about an hour later, we heard this blood-curdling scream coming out of the woods. And if you had to ask me what I thought it was at the time, I'd have said it was a woman or a child screaming. It was that loud. It was coming in and out, too, like this thing was either running around it quickly through the woods or flying or whatever. So we decided, well, we're going to spend the night, stay up, and see if we see anything or hear anything else. So that's what we did. So we were sitting around the fire again. I guess it was really early in the morning, maybe 1 or so, and I got up to stretch my legs. So I walked out onto the trail. Now, the campsite is right by the trail, and then the Conewaga Creek was right there. And I walked out onto the trail, and I just had this feeling that something wasn't right. I don't know. I you know how you get a feeling that something's different. So I went back to the campfire and I told this guy, hey, let's take our flashlights, go out onto the trail, walk up and down, and see if we, see anything. So they agreed. They all wanted to stretch their legs anyway. So we got out there and we walked up the trail, and we weren't 50 foot from the campsite when we saw it in the creek. This thing was standing right in the middle of the creek. The water was very low at that time. It was dark in color, but it had red projecting eyes. I mean, it was projecting light. It wasn't reflecting light. And by the time we got our flashlights on this thing, it literally jettisoned itself into the air. I didn't see any wings come out. I didn't see anything, though I did notice something on its back. So and when it reached its apex, it kind of screamed and took off. We heard it going in the distance. So we were kind of freaked out. So we ran back to the campsite, sat there wondering what it was we heard. My buddy's not talking. He's scared to death. The other guy asked me, he said, did you see something on its back? And I did. When we just got a quick glimpse of it. But it looked like it had wings on its back, but it never unfurled any wings. So when my buddy did start talking, he said, I'm going up to the administration building and spend the night up there. So those two went up there. I stayed at the campsite. I wouldn't know what was going on. But nothing else happened that night. Now, the interesting thing about this was I really kept a lot of this to myself for about 20 years until I started writing the blog. Now, I started the blog in 2005. But in 2008, I had mentioned in the blog about this encounter we had. Then I started getting people contacting me. Now, one guy who lived at Dick's Dam, which is right there by the campgrounds, he told me, he sent me an email. He said, I've been hearing screaming up and down that river that creek for years, and I didn't know what it was. So then I got an email about a week later from another scout leader. And he told me, he said, a couple weeks ago, he said, my troop was out at Camp Conewaga. We were camping out. And the kids went out on the trail, and they were at, during the daytime, they were just walking around. And they came running back to the campsite, screaming and yelling that they had seen a dragon. And that's what they said to him. They told him it was that's the only thing they could describe it as, a dragon. And he thought they were pulling his leg. He thought, they're just trying to play games with me. But after he had read my account, then he thought, well, maybe they did see something. So since that time, since 2008, I have received 5 sighting reports along that creek of something very similar to what I saw. Now, the funny thing about this is what we saw was very similar to what has been seen in Chicago. Dark in color, about 6 to 7 foot in height, very emaciated, but very bright red projecting light eyes. And that's what's being seen out in Chicago. Now, is there a connection? I don't know. But I just think it's interesting that I had that encounter, and then we're getting these sightings out there very similar to what people, myself and other people, have been seeing here in South Central Pennsylvania.
Interesting. One of the questions I just remembered. One of the questions of this paper that I lost was, "What's your opinion on the Patterson Gimlin video?"
I think it's real.
I think it's real.
Yeah, I think it's authentic. I think you got to look at the time when this thing was shot. I just don't think it could have been manipulated to the degree and how real it looked, and of course with the movement and everything. I just really haven't found much evidence to disprove it.
Yeah,
I believe that film. I think the Freeman film is also authentic. I have seen several, lesser known films and videos and photographs of other possible Bigfoot, and it may be very well be real as well. I know they're real. I saw one, so I know they're real. And I know people who have had encounters. So yeah, I believe it. I believe the Patterson Gimlin film is authentic.
So, but do you find it to be the best piece of evidence? Well, I guess it's got to be. I mean, there's not.
I say if you had to say it's the standard, I would say it is. I think the fact that the anatomy and it being a female and the way the musculature and moved around and the way it walked and such, and the size, I think it's the standard.
Okay, the Freeman film. I may have, but I'm not sure. Can you touch bases on that?
Yeah, I think I was up in Washington State. It was the guy who had taken it, and his son actually is a Sasquatch investigator as well. I suggest you go to YouTube and just check in the Freeman Bigfoot video and put it on there and bring it up. But I think there's enough there to determine that this is probably not fake.
Okay. I'm going to change here on you again. Mothman.
Mm-hmm.
Are there still a lot of reports today about the Mothman? Okay.
Even down in the area around Point Pleasant, in that area, all up and down the Ohio River Valley, I've had reports for years. People kind of think that after the bridge collapsed in '67, that people stopped seeing it, but that's just not the case. There have been multiple reports in Mason County and areas around there and up and down. I've had reports from Cincinnati up the whole way to Pittsburgh along the Ohio River Valley. So, yeah, I mean, it's still going on, and we've had a lot of sightings reported.
Here's another one for you. The New Jersey Devil.
Right.
Have you ever been in the Pine Barrens? Or?
Yeah, I've been Pine Barrens several times.
Really?
That's a more questionable cryptid. The whole story behind that, the lead story, and about it being some type of demon that was born from this woman and such. If people look deep into that phenomena, it didn't start in New Jersey. There were sightings of something very similar down south into the Eastern Shore for many years before the actual such sightings up in the Pine Barrens started. Now, I don't know how authentic they are, but there have been reported sightings all along that area, from Maryland Eastern Shore up into the Pine Barrens.
I have future plans to visit the Pine Barrens. You can't believe everything you read. I've read crazy stuff like bodies are dumped in there by the mafia and stuff like that. Is it? Would you say it's?
I used to have some mob friends. they,
What?
that area has been used as a dumping ground. Believe me.
I mean, my biggest concern would be what could possibly get a hold of me, like a bear, or I'm not really familiar with type of.
The fauna in that area is, I mean, there are a few black bear in there, very few. We've had Bigfoot encounters reported there. I've had several police officers report to me of seeing something described as the Jersey Devil. So people are seeing something in there. Now, I don't know exactly what it is. I think the Bigfoot encounters that have been sent to me and people I have talked to over the years, because there's several small state parks in that area as well. There has been a pretty high degree of cryptid sightings in that whole part of southern New Jersey.
So, in the Pine Barrens, is there camping areas, stuff like that, or?
Yeah, there are places you can camp in there.
Okay, maybe I should do that first and do my thing, before I really go deep into the.
It's a huge area. It's a fascinating area because it's just it's swampy for the most part, but there is camping. There are facilities you can use. There are state parks there as well. So, but the areas where people have a high concentration of sightings of this thing are in the more less accessible areas.
All right, Lon, what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you a break. I got to take a quick break and take care of something, and then I'm going to be right back. Okay.
Okay.
It's not going to be long.
Okay. Go lay down. Go lay down.
All right, and we're back. Lon, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I still didn't find that paper, and I did get up and look for it, take care of something else. But here's a question that popped up in my head. I get asked this a lot. Do you think Oops, wait a minute. There we go. Do you think Bigfoot and UFOs are somehow related?
I think in some cases there are connections. there are two cases in Pennsylvania that supposed UFO involvement with Bigfoot are known. The Presque Isle case, and then the sighting that Stan Gordon investigated up on the Chestnut Ridge. I'm quite sure there have been others, but those are the two that can are well known. I don't know if I think there's a lot of connections between the paranormal and all types of phenomena. But as far as UFO and Bigfoot, there does seem to be some evidence pointing that way.
Okay. And another one that popped up in my head. Do you think these, not all of them, but most of the interesting tree structures, do you think they're done by Bigfoot or?
I don't know. We have there are several research areas that people on my team have been conducting and working on where there is a lot of tree structure activity. I don't know what it is. The fact that a lot of these are way out in the middle of nowhere and seem to have some possible non-human related activity associated. I think there's a good possibility that it is Bigfoot. Now, why they do it, I don't know. I have seen several around here. Micho State Forest is an area where there does seem to be quite a lot of tree structure activity along the Susquehanna River on the western shore in York County. Tim Renner's had a research area there for years, and he's talked about it with me. But I've heard other people as well. I mean, Eric did some investigations down on the Susquehanna River down in Hartford County. There's a lot of Bigfoot activity along Susquehanna on the western shore. So, but there has been some type of tree structure activity there. Even some types of huge structures made. So what they are, what they symbolize, what they're there for, I can't really tell you, but people do see them, and until I guess when they actually see one in the process of putting one together or in the area, I guess, and they can kind of connect it. But at this point, I really don't know what it is.
Okay. Boots on the ground, doing research of Bigfoot out in the field. Have you ever heard any tree knocks?
I personally haven't. At a distance, I have. I've heard what could very well be a tree knock, though it was so far off I couldn't really determine that. I mean, I've heard. I used to do a lot of research out in western Maryland, and I've heard a lot of stuff down the valleys back then, but I don't know. I don't know. I read a lot of accounts where people talk about tree knocks. I personally can't vouch for that. I think it's possible, maybe, but I'm not really sure what that is. Are they communicating? Are they using it as some deterrent? I mean, who knows?
Okay. I had a lady on my show. She lives up in Colorado, and she was talking about finding her horses out in the barn, the hair braided.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went online and I researched it further. And there's a lot of people out there that are experiencing the same thing and having issues with Bigfoot. I'm just curious. Yes, they're highly intelligent, but my question is this: uh, you would think that a horse, if something like that came into the barn, would not stand still long enough for it to even happen. What do you think?
Um, I have talked to individuals who have seen interaction with livestock and Bigfoot, especially down in Texas. But I've talked to people in New York and down in Florida Panhandle and other places.
Right.
It does seem to happen. I mean, now I guess if the animals are used to the thing being around, maybe they won't react to it. Um, but I do know of one in particular. There was a gentleman who has a ranch down in the hill country down in right on the Guadalupe River, actually. And he was telling me that the Bigfoot on his property used to come because he used to raise sheep, and they used to come and sit in with the sheep, and the sheep didn't even they just walk around and come up to it, and he'd feed them and stuff and pet them, and it didn't seem to bother them. So I think if they get used to it, just like anybody else or anything else, they don't react to it after a while.
And I also read some reports about Bigfoot activity in the, I'm going to say, I'm trying to think of what that place is that you have to have a high military pass to even get on the property. I think it's in the Fort Meade area of Bigfoot reports. There was a woman that I talked to. She went in there actually to do some ghost hunting in a old abandoned hospital,
Mm-hmm.
and she said when she was coming out of there, and she had gotten into the woods, she ran into a group of Bigfoot. Um, I researched Bigfoot reports in that area. I didn't see too many. Have you ever gotten any reports about that
I've
area?
gotten a lot of reports from military people around forts and such. Fort Lewis McCord up in Washington, uh, around Fort Campbell down in Kentucky, Fort Stewart down in Georgia, even up in Goose Bay, Labrador, or Newfoundland. Several um, U.S. and Canadian forces who do joint ventures together, joint training together, have talked about the Sasquatch activity. And in fact, I had access to a manual that the special forces had put out years ago, talking about Sasquatch activity up in Canada and what to do if they ever ran across one. So we have talked to, I have talked to a lot of people who were in the military who had Bigfoot encounters or saw Bigfoot or talked to others who did. But Fort Lewis and McCord is probably the most active of anywhere here in the United States that I know of.
Right. Okay. I'm just looking at something here real quick. And okay. I know this is a hard question for anyone. Um, how far off do you think we are from proving the existence of Bigfoot? Proof. Do you think we're far
Uh,
off? Or
well, scientifically, until there's actual
a body?
physical proof for a body or something that's found, there's always going to be naysaying, and there's not going to really be any positive truth. I mean, you can talk to people who had encounters like myself and others. all day long. It's all anecdotal evidence, unless, then they can take photographs and video, and a lot of people are going to question regardless of that. Until there's scientific evidence of it, there's always going to be a question. And that has to do with anything as far as cryptids and the unknown. But I honestly, in the case of Bigfoot, I think that's pretty far off. I'm hopeful for the amount of time I have left on this earth that they do kind of find something. But when they do, I don't think the whole aura of the Bigfoot Sasquatch phenomenon is going to be a moot point. I think people are still going to be very interested in it because it's just something not everybody sees all the time, and it's still a mystery.
Exactly, but you yourself had the Holy Grail experience back in
Right.
1981. So,
Right. Well, I know it's out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm convinced of it. And, I don't think I had an hallucination or anything. I think I saw an actual flesh and blood being. Now, could it still been some type of interdimensional traveler, even though it was flesh and blood? Absolutely. Do we understand that aspect of it? No, I don't think we do yet. And it's all theory. But, as long as people who are involved with the research and the investigations keep an open mind, and I think more and more people are more open-minded to the phenomena, we may actually be able to prove that there is something to that.
Right. Now, one of the things I dislike, I can't say this word because my mother told me don't ever try not to use the word hate, but I dislike those in the paranormal, Bigfoot, UFO, that can't get along. Paranormal unity, I think, is where it should be, but
we've been talking about that for a long time, and as long as people have egos and think they're going to find like you said, the Holy Grail, and they're going to make a lot of money off of it or notoriety, you're always going to have people that are throwing a monkey wrench in the gears. I mean, that's just the way it is. The paranormal in general has got a lot of jealousy involved with it. I mean, I have felt the brunt of it myself. The Chicago winged humanoid case, these cases and this phenomena, I have heard it from all sides, and and a lot of it has to do because I will not come forward with a lot of witness information. I mean, I keep everything confidential unless the witness itself comes forward and says, you can go ahead and put it out there. But in the meantime, I won't do that. And that's a promise I have with them. Look, if I could keep confidentiality with our witnesses, then I'm not going to get many reports because it's going to get around. The fact that people want you to do their work for them, I just don't agree with that, So, to each his own, I guess. I try to be as cordial with as many people as I possibly can as far as any type of investigations. But you're always going to have a few out there that have ulterior motives in this thing. So, I don't get too upset about it. I used to let it bother me, but I kind of let the roll off my back now and don't even worry about it anymore.
Right. Okay. Let's talk about it. Now, if someone wants to get in touch with you, how can they do so?
Well, the website's fansofmonsters.com. They can go to my website and use the direct link to my email, which is lonstrickler@fansofmonsters.com, and my phone number's there as well. They can call me. And my team's website is cryptidhunters.org. and our information is there as well. So, you know, and we do try to put boots in the ground for any investigation in North America. I got a lot of people that work on the team, and we're in communication all the time. And if one of them cannot go out and look, go to the location, talk to the witness and such, I'll find somebody to do it. I mean, that's no problem. But no, I mean, yeah, the information's on the website, on the blog. All you got to do is go there and contact me.
Okay. Lon, I'd like for you to, send me that information, because I'd like to, put that out there for you as well.
Okay.
And I really appreciate you being on tonight. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm sorry. I apologize that I'm a little disoriented tonight, but it is what it is. And yeah, I really appreciate you being on tonight, and I thank you again. So, if you ever have anything that you would like to, get out there, get the word out, just let me know. I'll be more than happy to,
Sounds good. Sounds good.
So I'm not going to hold you up any longer tonight, and I'm going to go ahead and what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the show out. I'd like for you to join me for this tribute I'm going to do to. There was a 7-year-old girl, Raleigh Faith, and I had been following her case, and my members and listeners have put a lot of prayers out there for her. So what I went and did was I made this video, and I'm going to do a little slideshow, but I want to thank Zachary Freedom. He's the artist of the song and video. And Raleigh had liver cancer. She battled it the best, that she could. And there were days that she spent long hours on the couch, hurting and in pain. And we just kept the prayers going for her. So on July 22nd, she passed away. She went home with God. And I'm going to go ahead and close the show out with that video. And again, Lon, thank you for being on tonight, and God bless you, man.
You take care.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and put this up now. All right, let me find it. Where we at? Here we go.
I can't describe these tears or how my heart goes on. It's broken into pieces knowing that you're gone. I loved you oh so much. Oh yes, and I still do. God help me right now, I'm barely making it through. Gone too young, like the setting of the sun. Beautiful, you were full of life and love. We won't forget the way you touched our hearts, and that's when we'll carry you. We're never far apart. Oh, just a thought away. smiling face forever is ingrained. My hope is not all lost. I know I'll see you again. God knows the cost too. He gave it all for heaven. And joy will return to me in all of who you were. But now it's time to grieve and make do with all of this hurt. Gone too young, like the setting of the sun. Beautiful, you were full of life and love. We won't forget the way you touched our hearts, and that's where we will carry you. We're never far apart. Oh, just a thought away. A memory embraced, your sweet smiling face forever is ingrained. Gone too young, like the setting of the sun. Beautiful, you are full of life and love. We won't forget the way that you touched our hearts, and that's where we will carry you. We're never far apart. Oh, just a thought away. A memory embraced in your sweet smiling face forever is ingrained.